Chapter 34, in which Todd and Audrey Pratchett meets the Catbus Conductress during a terrible rainstorm. Now, once in a while during the summer, besides the hot sun, a storm is bound to occur. But this time, it was a torrential rainstorm. A rainstorm that the city of Kodono has endured many times in the past. It poured rain, it thundered, and the lightning was so bright that it turned the clouds white. Todd and Audrey, donned in their raincoats, went back home from the bakery where Mr. Pratchett works, after purchasing bread for toasts and sandwiches. With the bread stored in a waterproof wicker basket, they decide to take the city bus home. They take refuge at a green bus shelter. The rain continued to fall in drenching sheets, hammering the roof, and splashing on the ground in a torrent. "I do hope there's a bus that could take us to the neighborhood," Todd said. "I don't think we'll ever make it on foot. How are you, Audrey?" "I'm fine," Audrey said. "But can't you just hate the rain?" "Just stay put. I'm going to tell you a story." Little by little, the clouds began to grow darker and darker, so dark that the occasional lamplighters in raincoats light the kerosene lamps, even with the city around them cloaked in a low fog. Todd's story was briefly interrupted when the lights came on inside the bus shelter. "Todd?" she asked, starting to complain. "Yes?" he asked. "I don't like it here." "Don't you want to hear the end of my story?" "Yes, but when you finish, will the bus be here?" "I hope so. I pray for it to happen." "It's so dark." "But the lights are on. You have nothing to worry about. Now you listen and let me finish my story. Just think. Mr. Foxy Fox went for a walk through the beautiful flowery meadows. He had a Sunday coat on, and he held his bushy red tail bolt upright, and he was smoking his little pipe and singing all the while. Do you know what Foxy Fox sang, sis? 'I'm the cheerful Foxy Fox, hooray!' That's right," he laughed. "I'm the cheerful Foxy Fox, hooray!" And then he hopped for joy, and little Mr. Hedgehog was sitting on his hill, and he was so glad that his beets and radishes and carrots were coming on so nicely. And his wife was standing by the hedge, gossiping with Mrs. Mole and Mr. Field Mouse, who had just got a new fur for the autumn. "Todd?" "Yes?" "I hear something." "What did you hear?" "I can hear thunder getting nearer." "Don't listen to the thunder. Just listen to what Mrs. Hedgehog has to chatter about." "Yes, Todd, but the thunder is chattering so loud. I think it chatters much louder than Mrs. Mole and Mr. Field Mouse." "Turn away from the stupid thunder and come to me." "It's impossible, Todd. I don't feel well." "Everything will be all right." "Todd, is Foxy Fox unwell too? And little Mr. Hedgehog? And Mrs. Mole? And Mr. Field Mouse?" "I don't know. My father will probably be going back home. Won't be long before he starts to worry about us and decides to come find us. Are you crying?" "No, why should I be crying? I'm just glad you're with me." "That's because you're my sister. I won't let anything bad happen to you, even after I'm 100. I'm just glad that we're in our raincoats, as long as we can keep wearing these." Their luck must be generous when a green and beige bus arrives at where Todd and Audrey are. "So there's help after all," she said. "You were right." The doors opened, and out came a woman with blonde hair, blue suit, black shoes, blue earrings, and round spectacles. What a lovely lady she is, and she happens to be a conductress. Todd saw the name tag on her uniform that read, "Catherine D. Eleanor, Conductress, Kodono Bus Lines." "Say, are you two getting on this bus, away from this rain?" the bus conductress, Catherine Eleanor, asked. "We do," Todd said. It would be best if I can tell you how to get to our house. That could be arranged, Catherine said. Please board inside and take off your coats. I'll be taking your package in. You'll get them back when we arrive. We don't have any money, Audrey said. Who said you're going to pay? Catherine asked. We'll keep this between us. They board inside and look around. This bus had wood-paneled walls and green leather seats, pull cords attached to the ceiling. Sitting on the driver's seat was an old man with the same uniform, an old man with an eye patch on the left side of his eye. They take off their coats and put them at the front seat before taking a seat behind the driver. Catherine boards the bus with a wicker basket. What's inside it? She asked as she opened it. Bread, Miss Catherine, Todd said. That's for our family. What about them? I guess they're dry. Would you tell me which way is home? When he is hesitant to answer, she calmly said, smiling unusually, You can tell me, little boy. I think I can be trusted, don't you? That makes his eyes widen and look at her in suspicious confusion. But you already know where we live, don't you? Audrey asked her brother. What are you talking about? Catherine chuckled, taking off her glasses and her earrings. Her voice became deep and sultry. Took you that long to figure it out on your own, eh, darling? Right in front of the children, she began transforming as she became taller, her bosom slightly pushing out. Her ears became pointed. Her teeth grew into fangs. Her face almost cat-like, and her eyes becoming yellow, with black slit pupils. Audrey was stunned. I would never forget a face like that, the half-transformed Catherine snarled. Then how do you know you might still be afraid of me, like the time I first met you? After all, you were so very young. As in 8 years old. Audrey looked up at the cat-like face, unsure about what to do. Audrey knew that there was nothing she could say about it. So Audrey hugged the half-transformed Conductress tight, crying. Audrey felt the Conductress seize up. I know better now. I don't think you're scary at all. Inwardly, the Conductress felt relieved, but not quite. She knelt down and glared at Audrey. If you really think that I'm not chilling because of what I look like, I wish you could say the same to the other people. People turn their faces away in fear and terror. It appears to me that you've learned something today. What? Audrey asked. Never renounce on what you can love. The Conductress pushed her away. If only the energy of the cosmos can be immense enough to break the doubter. I have wanted to meet you two pleasant little children again for so very long. And how could I forget the many times you referred to me as dear puss? Audrey felt her tears pouring down. I always called you that, didn't I? There's no mistake, little girl. Who else would you expect? The Princess Kitty, perchance? How we missed her for nearly 3 weeks, Todd said. What are you doing here, driving an ordinary city bus with your engineer? Well, little boy, who said this is an ordinary bus? Purred the Conductress. This happens to be Neko Basu in disguise. And you haven't even noticed yet, don't you? I really expected this. There was a rumble from the bus, as if it were alive. How does he do it? He asked. What is he? And what kind of name is Neko Basu? Audrey asked. Neko Basu is what he's called where I'm from, purred the Conductress. You can still call him the Catbus. He is what mythology calls a Bakeneko. A cat that lives for a very long time becomes a Bakeneko. a yokai, a ghost, gaining the ability to shapeshift. They dance and speak the common tongue. However, their favorite food is poison and lamp oil. Drinking lamp oil might have seemed strange to the people at the time, but you can't blame the cat, as the oil used for the lamps was fish oil. During the Edo period, people believed that cats with long tails could bewitch humans, so they decided to crop them. In general, Bakineko are demons. However, there have been encounters of Bakineko getting along with their human families, if their transition to a Bakineko was peaceful. You see, I'm a Bakineko myself. You saw my semblance, didn't you? Partially, Todd said.
You are?
Audrey's eyes widened.
Are you a ghost?
Not even close, put the conductress. Not for long, anyway. Why, one of these days, we will no longer be invisible to those who don't believe in anything in this city. You could say that we'll be corporeal. Me, the engineer, and my bus. Then the transformation progressed, with her entire body becoming taller and covered in fur, her bosom pushing out further, and her tail jutting out from behind.
What about Princess Kitty? She asked. Is she a Bakineko?
Why, little Audrey, my kind began as cats, put the conductress. We walk on all fours, and when we live for a long time, we've got the ability, learning to walk on two legs. In KAWAII Wonderland, the Princess Kitty began as a white kitten. But as time passes on, she became matured, with peach-colored skin from the waist upward. Her ears and tail, as well as her face, remain. I came from a different path.
Wait a minute, Todd said. Audrey happened to draw a picture of the Catbus, and Kitty brings it to life, including you and the engineer.
There exists a Catbus, put the conductress. You just didn't know it until today.
Oh, dear puss,
Audrey's eyes widened.
What kind of person are you? And where did you come from? I'd like to get to know you a little better now.
Why don't I have my engineer tell you, put the conductress. I'm sure he can do it better than I could. Audrey went to the engineer and asked,
Do you really know about her? Dear puss?
Clearly. I don't even know where to begin, he said. Let's just say, like me, she came from a world underneath the earth, a world that exists since time immemorial. It's called the Underground, a glorious, immeasurable kingdom where yokai reside. It was falsely referred to as Yomi no Kuni, which is the land of the dead, often compared to hell or Sheol. It is impossible for the dead to return to the land of the living until the cat came. But back then in the underground, she comes and goes as she bloody pleases, like she couldn't even care less.
Does she?
Audrey asked. Todd asked.
Engineer, what is she like? What do you see in her when she comes from the same place you are from?
The engineer sighed. A lot of bloody things. She does have a side of her, one which you both are unaware of. Out of all the yokai to ever exist, she's far more dangerous than I ever dared to imagine at first, when I first met her. Too dangerous, that in the end she would utterly bring forth misfortune to anyone of mortal race who has ever met her without reason. In the underground, out of all the yokai, she was, after all, the center of attention, the manipulator of all things.
Is she?
Audrey asked. There was a long silence, aside from the sound of the rain hitting hard on the metal roof of the bus.
She is, the engineer said. What you didn't know yet is her real name, which I shall tell you right now. Her full name is the Cat Queen of the Underground, the great mother of disorder and consternation of the earth. Audrey can feel a strange coldness when the engineer utters, Queen? I didn't know dear Puss was a queen. But how could we tell? Todd asked. She don't dress like one. Then he backed away as the Cat Queen reached out her hand towards the back of his neck. In her forefinger, there was a long, black claw. I didn't mean to, he quickly added. And how could she tell that you didn't? The engineer demanded. Well, consider yourself lucky that you're on her Pratchett side. Too far. Do you want to know what would happen if you both are not? There is such thing in her mind as malice. No, Todd said. Then the Cat Queen quietly snarled as she shrank away from him. You both do not know the other side of her yet, but you shall, the engineer said. It's the only way to make you understand. Both of the children sat silent and motionless. Fear seemed to extend its hand, like a dark cloud looming up to devour them, more darker than the storm that still lingers. And do you meet her? Audrey asked. Meet her? The engineer asked. Alas, she met me first. I'm a bucking echo, like her. The problem was that I can't bloody transform into me true self, meaning that I'm stuck in this body forever. No need to tell you more about it now. We have to discuss something else. Back in the ancient world, she found me all mangled up by cruel owners. Managed to escape, but not before I'd lose me eye. Repulsed by me appearance. Damned on me tormentor she did. However, she doesn't kill them. She made them kill themselves. She did? Audrey exclaimed, and swallowed hard. She can feel herself shaking, and her eyes glazing. He nodded sadly. How she did it? Well, Bucking Echo, like the Kitsune, is known for their trickery. I mean, boss is about the same as everybody else, except that she's the most powerful of them. One day, not long after I met her, upon seeing the owners, she masquerades herself as a beautiful woman, an Oiran. She seduced them, teased them, make them fight each other over her. When one of my owners is killed, the one who killed him with his dagger declared his love for her and wanted to marry her, but she turned away, terrified of seeing him murder another man. That made him frustrated, so he started to beat her and drag her to his house, threatening to kill her if she screamed for help. Once they're in the house, then he started to thrust his body into hers like a bloody animal in heat. She even begged him to stop. He won't unless she agreed to love him. She yielded, much to his pleasure. However, it didn't last. That's when she got the upper hand. Soon after, she revealed her true self. Obviously, he panicked, even called her a monster. But she taunted him, saying that she thought he loved her. That's when she ravaged him in return. But he manages to escape and flee into the forest, whilst trying to save himself. Try as he might, it is all futile, for at every turn he heard her repeating over and over that he loved her, along with a mad cackling. He ran farther and farther, until he happens to stumble onto a cliff and fall to his death. Satisfied of what she had done to manipulate them, she had me as a partner. It is said that a man can fall in love with a Bacchan echo just like he can with a human woman. When one seemed hostile, he might never have the chance to hear the bloody end of it.
That's terrible,
Audrey cried. That's because it is. It did happen. And that was a long time ago. Even before the both of you were born. Though she does have opportunistic moments on her enemies, and anyone who's stupid enough to anger her. Sometimes she would kill her enemies. Often she could kill her enemies while using this. He raised up his index finger, a long black claw on either forefinger. Just think. Behind the enemy's back, she could pierce either claw on the back of his neck, causing instant paralysis. The bottom line, that he's still alive, but he can't even move or scream as she starts leaping on top of him, pound for pound, started tearing him at the neck and slashing at the ribs, spilling out his intestines. So what does that tell you, children, about the cat queen of the underground, which was also me boss? He can see that she's on the verge of tears. You did say you want to know her, didn't you? Well, I'm telling the both of you this for your own good either way. Bring to mind that ancient old poem from ages past. She is not just any cat. The tale should be a clue. She's more vicious than a rat. She can change out of the blue. From sweet to demure, to malicious and cruel. The blows she'd endure, only to die in a pool. Thrown there by those who were supposed to have cared. Between the waters and blows, she was not spared. But then something woke, and anger did flare. The spirit swelled and broke, and by hate it was snared. Vengeance and anger formed into an echo. Beware the wrath of the Bacchan echo. A heavy silence fell inside the bus. Audrey can feel herself shaking. The rain came down harder than ever before. Oh, yes, the engineer said. That poem does fit her perfectly. She's very quick, intelligent, and vicious, able to attack without the slightest vacillation, with a flash of her fangs, the swiftness of her reflexes, and of course, the terrifying black claw on either forefinger. As far as you know, even though you can trust her and have her by your side, she's a very unpredictable source of all that is unfortunate in the world that's better off concealed in mystery by everyone. A very remorseless, unreasonable, violent entity of chaos, the likes of which no one should ever test her limits or invoke her wrath, unless they want to end up suffering the consequences, for she is ill-famed for holding grudges. Which means, if you happen to be on the wrong side, I fear that even a terrible misfortune shall await you both.
She couldn't!
Audrey cried finally. Then the tears came down, while Todd comforts her. He glared at the cat queen, saying, I wish we never met you.
Then your cat shouldn't have brought her here, along with me and the bus!
The engineer snapped. It really was fate that played a terrible part and that's considered the worst of it. Pretty soon, the whole city is going to know how grave that girl's actions really is. Because this isn't the end of something, boy. It's just the bloody beginning. And it's never been nearer, puzzed the Cat Queen. Now that yokai is yearning to become corporeal because of your preciously little Princess Kitty, your best bet is to keep your eyes open. How could I ever thank her?
That made Audrey ask something to the creature. You don't have any other friends, dear puss, do you?
I have made thousands, purred the Cat Queen. Yokai. I know them as they would know me, just so as long as they continue respecting me as the Cat Queen. But I shouldn't have to tell you who, or what, or where. They blend in, whether they were human or animal. You can never be sure whether it is a yokai you are gazing at, or just a kind old lady or squirrel up in the trees. Maybe it might be your school teacher. Just think, you might never know whether she's a yokai or not. They're everywhere. The girl's pupils shrank at the thought. The Princess Kitty is a wonder to me, and to others who happen to meet her, purred the Cat Queen. Out of all the creatures I've seen and heard of, she never fails to put a smile on my face. Yet her presence isn't confirmed. She remained unheard, unspoken. It was very intelligent for them to get their head out of the clouds, and all it will cost them was everything. You've seen Kitty lately? Todd asked. Why, young man, I've been to this city so many times for days on end. It's impossible for me to keep in touch with the Princess Kitty. She may be anywhere, away from the rain. If you do see her, please tell her that we're looking forward to see her in the fair. Would I ever promise you that? I don't like the way some people are treating other children, especially their own. They don't listen to them, they don't understand them, and they're always judging them. Now they live in a different world than they do. A world grown-ups too left behind a long time ago. But you know what? They're not going to be there for very long. Do you really think she's in a good mood on the inside? That made the children sad, not because of Princess Kitty's departure, but the grown-ups hardly believed the adventure they and their grandfather had with her. She went on. You shall both remember this. And the heavens bring forth the Princess Cat, only to be forsaken by those who doubt. And from that day forth, misfortune is as one born within her, and misfortune shall befall on them. Why didn't our family believe that we're on a quest to Bonfire with Kitty? Todd asked. The rest haven't seen the Princess Kitty yet, except your old man, my favorite of the bunch, the Flatterer. Which means they won't even believe in the Princess Kitty's adventure in town. What about Dad? Audrey asked. He does. He said so himself. Your father? The Cat Queen asked. Even he hasn't seen the Princess Kitty. He and the rest of your family only saw her disguise. It won't work that way. After all, she must be believed to be seen. The children fell back in shock. Todd began to speak, but he frowned. I don't believe you. You don't? purred the Cat Queen. The heart of a child from within is what makes them believe. For a grown-up, sometimes he has no time for anything. But that's how society works nowadays, does it, Pratchett? I presume your flatterer of an old man
has a plate full of his own. They couldn't speak, as she raised her left arm and made a large gesture with her hand. A round red crystal ball has appeared. "What's that?" Todd asked. "Call it an act of judgment." The crystal pulsates with energy. They can hear voices coming from inside. "I said that just to make my children feel better after the incident with Mrs. Malchance. My children and the grandparents didn't know it, especially my father." "Well, what if they do? That's what I want to know." "I hardly believe in anything. I'm a grown-up. Grown-ups always have time for work and no play, do they? Let's hope it stays that way until the fair." "If you didn't tell, I won't either. I wouldn't want to let my own child down with talks about this princess of yours." "It's like as if the children of the whole world wants in on this, after my children tells it all on them." "What if they spread talks of this princess getting to the other children, like mine?" "Don't worry about that. It'll pass. They'll move on to something else. Eventually, like your son, our children will have to grow up." Todd and Audrey had nothing to say. They were too hurt. The Cat Queen went on. "Oh, don't tell me that you two still don't believe me. It's a special crystal, darling. A useful souvenir from where I'm from. One must wonder how the Princess Kitty would react to all of this, if she ever finds out. I think she'll be hurt like you two. Even though I wasn't here, I know she did great things to the people in your city. She had done wonders, the likes of which everyone had never witnessed, while succumbing herself to the ecstasy of the universe around her. How instant her actions, how energetic her body. But it just stands to reason, when the others brush it off like they were nothing. The same way your caring family brushed your adventure to Bomvaria with the Princess Kitty off as a dream. I know why they had to do it, dear puss," Todd realized. "They did it because it's for our own good. So we've decided to grow up." Just for a moment, the Cat Queen nearly flinched as she felt her body quivering. "Is this the thanks that the girl gets after taking you two on an adventure?" she choked. "You have to understand," Todd said. "I'm going to be a teenager this fall. In several years my sister will be a teenager as well. Then we'll have responsibilities for the rest of our lives. We can't stay children forever, dear puss. There isn't a thing you can do to stop it." "I will stop it!" she snarled, with her fangs bared and her claws protruding and her tail and fur puffing up. But Todd kept his composure. "No matter what you do, you can't scare us. You can't threaten us. You can't stop us from growing up. There's nothing you could do about it. Nothing." The Cat Queen can hear the engineer call out, "You say, boss? Even the children wants you to stop." She can feel her muscles relax. Then her body shrinks as the fur and ears molt away and her tail retreating. When she spoke again, her voice became soft. "If you wish to grow up, Pratchett, fine. I will not stop you from doing so." But the voice inside her head simply said, "But that doesn't mean I won't let you forget her. Let's see if you're ready to pay the price." She turned around, calmly telling the engineer, "Take the children home. You know where they live." Muttering to himself, the engineer turns on the ignition of the disguised Catbus, and was relieved that the engine didn't stall, meaning that he must have fallen asleep by now. If it does stall at the last minute, the engineer would likely cut off the bus's eyelids, so he'll never sleep again. As the disguised Catbus speeds away, Catherine said to the children, "Now, if you and your sister want, you can just rest while we take you home. I'll let you know when we stop. In fact, You can play with my cats." She opened up her basket, and Haruka and Minako came out and leap onto the children's laps. While the cats look up at the children, exhaling their breath towards them, the children began to feel drowsy before falling asleep. Just then, she growled as she partially transformed while pulling out a Tanegashima pistol and pointed at the back of the engineer's neck. "What is this?" he shouted. "Change of destination, darling," purred the Cat Queen. "Take them to the Chat Noir Palace." A coldness suddenly came down onto his spine. "No, boss!" he yelled. "That's where the Duke lives! You can't make—" "If you want to spend the rest of your life with no head over your shoulders, I'd be much obliged," she sneered. With no other alternative, the engineer bells at the Catbus. "You order! Destination Chat Noir Palace! Hop to it!" The destination sign on the Catbus read, "Chat Noir Palace." Then she fully transformed into her true self. "Wise decision, darling," she said. "Very wise." Aiming the pistol to the side, she fires her gun. Instead of a bullet, confetti shoots out, along with a tiny flag with a message, "Cuban," popping out of the muzzle. Upon looking at the flag beside him, he glared at her, knowing that he'd been tricked. "You do realize you're supposed to keep your eyes on the road, darling," she said. "Wouldn't want you to cause an accident." He thought to himself, "Now I know how the old man feels." Todd and Audrey awoke with a stretch as Catherine calls out, holding their raincoats. "We're nearly there, Pratchett's. Put these on." They put on their raincoats. As soon as Todd is about to pick up the basket, he froze and stared at the side windows. Something wasn't quite right. The Catbus stops next to a huge royal palace with statues of lions guarding it. He said to Catherine, "I think you made a mistake. That's not our house." "I know it's not where you live," she said. Then she leans closer towards the children, smirking. "But this is where you two get off." The children can hear a low growl from behind, forcing them to turn around. They saw Haruka and Minako standing at 4 feet tall on their hind legs. The children can hear Catherine. "Oh, how you two forced me to take such drastic measures, Pratchett's." Before the children can do anything, the cats begin baring their fangs and snarling, coming towards them, reaching out with their sharp claws, forcing the children to flee, out of the Catbus and into the rain. The cats went no further. At the same time, the children felt betrayed. They thought the Cat Queen, or the Catbus Conductress, was their friend when they first met her, along with the Catbus and the engineer. The children then saw the Cat Queen glaring at them from behind the doorway. She said pitifully, "One way or another, both of you will understand." She closed the door, and the bus speeds off. However, Audrey begins to run after it. "Sis!" Todd screamed, calling out to her. "Wait! Wait!" But she never listened to her brother. She kept running after the bus, which may be farther from now, frantically calling out to the Cat Queen. "Dear Puss!" She was close to sobbing. "Dear Puss, come back! Come back!" However, even though she's young, she forgot about the hazard of running on a ground that was drenched by the rain. In no time, she slipped and fell hard onto the ground in a loud splash. In pain and grief, she decides not to get up and just lay there, bawling. "Sis!" She can hear her brother running towards her, helping her to her feet. "Are you all right?" But she continues to cry in a steady, monotonous wail, lingering into the cold, wet air. "She left us! She left us!" With the Catbus speeding through the streets, the Cat Queen continues to gloat while she caresses both of her black cats as they purr. See whether or not that haughty old Duke in there can straighten those two out. Then we'll see, won't we? But this was the straw that broke the camel's back for the engineer. He slammed his foot onto the brakes, and the Catbus came to a stop. She carefully placed her cats on her seat and stormed towards the engineer. "You stupid old fool," she snapped. "You dare stop my Catbus after we left them at the palace?" "You made me drive there, so you can leave them with the Duke!" he shouted. "For bloody sake, we know what he's like, especially the young girls he had affairs with." "Never worry of that. He'll see that they're both underage. Even he had standards when it comes to such consent. Also, he's not interested in just young girls over the age of 18. He's interested in both sexes." "That's beside the point!" "Your objections toward him do not interest me. He will straighten those two out. Even he desires to make her presence known." "Well, sorry if it didn't interest you, boss!" The engineer gets up and puts his raincoat on. "What do you think you're doing?" "Going away from you, boss, because I'm done. I don't want anything to do with either you or your friends no more, causing trouble to anyone you come across. You'll do anything, to make them believe in her." "And where will you go?" she hissed. "How are you going to live?" "I'll find a way." He opens the door. "All the time for me." "You're making a terrible mistake leaving me there." "Oh, am I?" he shouted. "Perhaps it is you who made a terrible mistake by forcing everyone to believe." "You will not last the weekend, I promise you," she snarled. "You won't even last a day. The problem that we keep having between us is that you keep thinking that I have delusions. And you keep thinking human beings get what they deserve if they don't believe no more. What also makes me angry is you acting like one of them, especially that mayor." "Then I'd rather be one of them than to be with you!" he bellowed, and stormed out of the Catbus, out in the rain. Seeing him running out, she said to herself, "So help me, you will regret of ever disrespecting me. As High Supporter, I'll stop at nothing to have the Princess Kitty fulfill her destiny. She deserves to be welcomed here, after all the great things she has done. As it is written." She can hear her cats growling and hissing, but she calmly said, "No, my children. No need to hurt him for making your mother very angry. It's the Pratchett children you want to be with, right after we take them home, when they're straightened out by that supercilious Duke."